Hi chess friends, today we are going to witness Magnus' brilliancy against Nodirbek. Magnus plays with white, Nodirbek is black. Magnus starts with e4, black plays e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, a6, Roy Lopez, bishop to a4, knight to f6, castle on the king side, bishop to e7, Murphy defense, closed variation, d3, usually everyone plays rook to e1, both moves protects the e4 pawn. Magnus changes the move order, d6, c3, makes space for bishop to land on c2 square, after b5 by black, castle on the king side, rook to e1, b5, attacks the bishop, bishop to c2, d5, knight b2 d2, d pawn takes e4 pawn, d pawn takes e4 pawn, bishop to e6, preparing bishop to c4, queen to e2. Now bishop to c4 is not possible. Bishop to c4 will lose a pawn for black by bishop to c4, knight takes bishop on c4, b pawn takes knight on c4, queen takes c4 pawn, queen to c8, h3. Magnus is inviting black to sacrifice the bishop on h3. Let's see the continuation. Bishop takes h3 pawn, g pawn takes bishop on h3, queen takes h3 pawn, queen to f1, queen to h5, queen to g2. Black has 2 pawns for bishop. White has 2 tempi advantage. Back to the position. If the white's queen is on the d1, then the idea of sacrificing the bishop on h3 will work out for black, as the queen is away from the king. Game continued as knight to d7, knight to f1, bishop to c4, attacks the queen, queen to d1, moves it to safety, rook to d8, preparing discovery attack on the queen, knight to e3. Magnus don't care, as there is no piece for the black's knight to capture with discovery attack. Knight to b6, rook attacks the queen, queen has no squares, blocks the rook attack by bishop to d2, bishop to e6. Black don't want to exchange the bishop for knight, b3, controlling the c4 square to prevent knight r before coming to the c4 square, f6, queen to e2, bishop to f8, rook e2 d1, rook to d7, c4, b pawn takes c4 pawn, b pawn takes c4 pawn, bishop to c5, threatening bishop takes knight on e3, followed by bishop takes c4 pawn, which can win a pawn for black. Knight to d5 ruins the idea, and the knight has excellent square. It will be a blunder to capture the knight with knight. Then c pawn takes knight on d5 will fork the knight and bishop, which wins a piece for white. Back to the position. Knight to d4. Black also wants to have a outpost for his knight. Knight takes knight on d4. Bishop takes knight on d4. Attacks the rook. Rook a to b1. Moves it to safety and controls the open b file. Queen to f8. Preparing queen to a3 to attack the a2 pawn. a4. Pawn moves away. Rook a to d8. Bishop to b4. Attacks the queen. Bishop to c5. Blocks the bishop. a5. Attacks the knight. Knight takes knight on d5 was played. Best move is bishop takes bishop on b4. Let's see the continuation. A pawn takes knight on b6. Bishop takes knight on d5. B pawn takes c7 pawn. Rook takes c7 pawn. C pawn takes bishop on d5. Material is even and the game. Back to the position. Game continued as knight takes knight on d5, c pawn takes knight on d5, bishop to f7. Now the white's pawn controls the center, and the black's bishop on f7 has no scope. White has small advantage. Bishop takes bishop on c5, queen takes bishop on c5, bishop to a4, attacks the rook, rook to d6, moves it to safety and protects the a6 pawn, queen to e1, protects the a5 pawn, f5. Black wants to exchange f pawn for the strong d5 pawn. By e pawn takes f5 pawn, rook takes e5 pawn, rook d to c1, attacks the queen, queen to a7, e pawn takes f5 pawn, queen to d4, another mistake by black. Best move is h5. Let's see the continuation. Bishop to b3, b pawn takes d5 pawn, queen takes e5 pawn, bishop takes bishop on b3, rook takes bishop on b3. White is still better. Black needs to play for draw. Back to the position. Game continued as queen to d4. Black tries to defend the e5 pawn. Rook to b4, attacks the queen and protects the bishop on a4. Queen takes d5 pawn. Rook takes c7 pawn. Queen takes a5 pawn was played, which is a blunder. Best move is to exchange queens by queen to d2, which can prolong the game a little longer. Pause the video and find the brilliant move played by Magnus. Compliments on finding the move. The move is rook takes bishop on f7. Magnus takes advantage of the discovery attack on the queen. This rook cannot be captured. If king takes rook on f7, rook to b7 check, king to f6, queen takes queen on a5, queen is lost and there is checkmate in 10 moves. Back to the position. So black played queen takes bishop on a4. Slightly better is to capture the rook on b4. Rook takes g7 pawn check, which wins a pawn. King to f8. Rook takes queen on a4 was played, which is also winning for black. But there is a best move than this. Best move is queen takes e5 pawn. Let's see the continuation. Threatening queen to e7 checkmate. If black tries to control the e7 square by rook 8 to e7, then rook b8 check. Rook d8 is forced as there is no square for the king. Then queen to e7 checkmate. Or if rook 6 to d7, then queen to f6 check. King to e8 is forced. Rook to g8 checkmate. So black has to exchange queens by queen to a1 check, queen takes queen on a1, rook to d1 check, king to h2, rook takes queen on a1, f6, rook takes a7 pawn is coming, followed by rook to b7, rook to a8 checkmate. To avoid checkmate, black has to give up the rook. White wins easily. Back to the position. Game continued as rook takes queen on a4. This continuation will take more time for white to win. Rook to d1 skewers the white's queen. Queen takes rook on d1. Rook takes queen on d1 check. King to h2. King takes rook on g7. Rook takes a6 pawn. Wins one more pawn. e4, g4, h5, rook to e6. Magnus goes after the e pawn. Rook to e1, king to g3, and black resign on move 45. Both the pawns will fall very soon, and it's not possible to stop all the 4 pawns from queening. So black resigned. If you like the video, share, subscribe and like. Thank you.